Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The mist clung to the ancient trees like a shroud, wrapping the forest in an eerie silence. Elwyn Draven, a seasoned archaeologist with more years in the field than most of his peers, stood at the edge of an overgrown clearing, his heart pounding in his chest. Before him lay the entrance to what he had spent a lifetime searching for, the legendary castle of Eldoria. It wasn't supposed to exist, not according to most historians. Eldoria was a myth, a relic of ancient folklore, whispered about in the darkest corners of taverns and passed down through generations as nothing more than a fairy tale. But Elwyn had never been one to dismiss such stories lightly. He believed in the kernel of truth buried within every legend, and now, as he gazed upon the moss-covered stones that marked the castle's entrance, he knew he was right. The entrance was hidden beneath layers of ivy and thick, twisting roots, as if the forest itself had conspired to keep the castle's secrets buried. His team, a small, tight-knit group of fellow archaeologists and adventurers, stood behind him, their breath visible in the cool, damp air. They were nervous, but who could blame them? The forest had an unsettling quality, the kind that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. "Are you sure about this, Elwyn?" asked Talia, his second-in-command, a woman whose sharp intellect and even sharper instincts had saved their lives more than once. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. Elwyn didn't answer right away. He approached the entrance, running his hands over the rough, cold stone. It was real. Solid. He could feel the ancient magic humming beneath his fingertips, a faint but undeniable pulse that resonated through his bones. "We're close, Talia," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Closer than anyone has ever been." Talia nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then let's do this." With a nod to his team, Elwyn led the way into the darkness. The inside of the castle was as silent as a tomb. Their footsteps echoed off the stone walls, the sound magnified by the emptiness that surrounded them. It was clear that no one had set foot in Eldoria for centuries, perhaps millennia. Dust coated the floors in thick layers, and the air was musty, heavy with the scent of decay. But there was something else, too. A presence. It was subtle at first, just a nagging feeling at the edge of Elwyn's consciousness, but it grew stronger with every step they took. The castle was not empty. Not entirely. They moved deeper into the castle, their torchlights flickering against the walls, revealing faded murals and long-forgotten tapestries that hinted at the grandeur this place once held. Elwyn could barely contain his excitement. This was more than he had ever hoped to find. The stories, the legends, they were all true. In the Grand Hall, they found the first real evidence of the magic that had once thrived in Eldoria. The room was massive, with high, vaulted ceilings and a long, stone table that stretched the length of the hall. At one end of the table stood a throne, its surface inlaid with precious gems that glittered even in the dim light. But what drew their attention was the floor beneath the table, a mosaic of intricate symbols and runes that pulsed with a faint, otherworldly light. Elwyn approached the mosaic cautiously, his heart racing. He could feel the magic thrumming beneath the surface, powerful and ancient. He knelt down, tracing one of the symbols with his finger, and the light flared, blinding in its intensity. The room seemed to shift around them, the walls and ceiling stretching and contracting as if the very fabric of reality was bending. Time itself slowed, the flickering torchlight moving sluggishly, as if trapped in thick syrup. Elwyn felt a wave of nausea wash over him, but he forced himself to focus, to understand what was happening. "Everyone, stay calm," he shouted, though his voice sounded distorted, like it was coming from far away. Talia and the others looked at him in confusion, their movements sluggish and disoriented. Elwyn realized with a start that they were caught in some kind of time distortion, a spell that had been lying dormant, waiting for someone to trigger it. He quickly pulled back his hand, breaking the connection, and the room snapped back to normal. The torchlight flickered as it should, the air once again filled with the sounds of their breathing and the faint creaks and groans of the ancient castle settling. "What the hell was that?" gasped one of the team members, a young archaeologist named Samuel, his face pale. Elwyn stood, his mind racing. "The magic here is tied to time and space," he said, more to himself than to the others. "This castle isn't just a relic, it's a weapon." As they continued their exploration, Elwyn's mind kept returning to the strange time distortion they had experienced. The castle's magic was more potent than anything he had ever encountered, more dangerous. And yet, it was also captivating. He could feel it calling to him, urging him deeper into its secrets. In the castle's hidden library, they found the key to understanding the true nature of Eldoria. The shelves were lined with ancient tomes, their pages yellowed with age but still legible. Elwyn and Talia pored over the books, uncovering the history of the castle and the war that had led to its abandonment. It was a war unlike any other, fought with magic that could bend time and space, tear apart reality, and reshape the world. The castle had been the epicenter of this power, the stronghold of a faction of mages who sought to control time itself. But their ambitions had nearly destroyed them. The war had ended in devastation, the mages sealing away their magic within the castle to prevent it from being used again. Elwyn felt a chill run down his spine as he read the final passages of the ancient text. The magic was still here, still waiting. And now, it had them in its grasp. As they prepared to leave the library, a cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing their torches. The darkness was absolute, oppressive. Elwyn could hear his team's panicked breaths, the rustle of their clothes as they fumbled for their lights. "Stay calm," he ordered, though his own heart was pounding in his chest. "Light the torches." But before they could, a soft, ethereal glow filled the room, casting long shadows across the walls. In the center of the room stood a figure, translucent and shimmering, a spectral guardian, bound to the castle. The guardian's voice echoed through the chamber, soft yet filled with authority. "You should not have come here." Elwyn stepped forward, trying to keep his voice steady. "We mean no harm. We're only here to study, to learn." The guardian shook its head, the motion slow and deliberate. "The magic in this place is not meant for the living. It is too powerful, too dangerous. You must leave, before it consumes you." Talia moved to stand beside Elwyn, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. "What is this magic? Why was it sealed away?" The guardian's gaze fixed on her, and for a moment, Elwyn thought he saw a flicker of sadness in its eyes. "It is the magic of time and space, the power to alter reality itself. It was used in a war long ago, a war that nearly destroyed this world. The mages of Eldoria sealed it away, but it was too late. The damage was done." Elwyn felt a deep sense of dread settle in his gut. "What happens if we don't leave?" The guardian's form seemed to shimmer, growing less distinct. "The magic will find a host. It will use you to escape, to reignite the war. You must leave, before it is too late." And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the guardian vanished, leaving them alone in the flickering light of their torches. The warning hung heavy in the air. Elwyn knew they should leave, that they were in over their heads. But he also knew that leaving now meant abandoning the greatest discovery of his career, and possibly the key to understanding a power that had been lost to time. The team was divided. Some wanted to leave, to get out while they still could. Others, driven by curiosity, greed, or something darker, wanted to stay, to see what more they could uncover. Elwyn tried to keep the group together, but the castle seemed to have a will of its own. The walls shifted, doors appeared where there had been none before, and the rooms seemed to stretch and contract, making it impossible to navigate. It was as if the castle itself was alive, playing with them, testing their resolve. In the chaos, one of the team members, an ambitious and reckless man named Victor, decided to take matters into his own hands. He had always been driven by a desire for power, and the magic of Eldoria was too tempting to resist. Ignoring the Guardian's warning, Victor found his way back to the Grand Hall, to the mosaic that had triggered the time distortion. He knelt down, placing his hands on the glowing symbols, and began to chant the words he had learned from the ancient texts. The castle reacted immediately. The air crackled with energy, the walls trembling as the magic awakened. Time began to warp around him, the room distorting in ways that defied logic. Victor's eyes burned with a manic light as he felt the power coursing through him, but he was not strong enough to control it. The magic surged, overwhelming him, twisting his mind and body. His screams echoed through the castle, a sound of pure agony as the magic consumed him, warping him into something unrecognizable, a creature of pure energy, trapped between time and space. The distortion spread, warping the castle even further. Rooms disappeared, hallways stretched into infinity, and the team was scattered, each member lost in a different part of the castle. Elwyn fought to keep his bearings, but the magic was too strong, too chaotic. He knew they had to stop it, but he had no idea how. He wandered through the shifting corridors, glimpsing visions of the past, the ancient war, the mages who had wielded the magic, and the devastation they had wrought. He saw the castle's fall, the sealing of the magic, and the creation of the spectral guardian. It was a story of hubris, of power unchecked, and the consequences of trying to control forces beyond understanding. Finally, Elwyn found himself back in the library, where he had left Talia and the others. The room was in chaos, the shelves overturned, books scattered everywhere. Talia was there, along with Samuel and the few remaining members of the team, all of them bruised and battered from their encounters with the castle's magic. "We need to stop this," Talia said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Before it destroys us all." Elwyn nodded, his mind racing. "There's a way to stabilize the magic, to stop the distortions, but it requires a sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" Samuel asked, his voice trembling. Elwyn hesitated, but he knew there was no other choice. "Someone has to become the new guardian, to bind themselves to the castle and keep the magic contained. It's the only way." The silence that followed was heavy, each member of the team realizing the gravity of what Elwyn was saying. To become the guardian meant giving up their life, their freedom, to become one with the castle, forever tied to its magic. "I'll do it," Elwyn said, his voice firm. Talia's eyes widened. "Elwyn, no. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Elwyn replied, shaking his head. "This is what I've been searching for my whole life. If this is how it ends, then so be it. But I won't let this magic escape, not again." He turned to the others, his gaze steady. "Get out of the castle. Find your way back to the entrance, and leave. Don't look back." Talia looked like she wanted to argue, but she knew there was no point. She nodded, her expression grim. "We'll be waiting for you, Elwyn." He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I doubt that." Elwyn watched as Talia and the others left, disappearing into the shadows. He felt a pang of sorrow, but it was quickly replaced by determination. He had to finish this. He made his way back to the Grand Hall, where the magic was still raging, twisting reality in ways that defied comprehension. Victor's twisted form hovered above the mosaic, his body barely recognizable as human, his eyes burning with a crazed light. Elwyn approached the mosaic, feeling the magic crackling in the air, the power pulsing through the stone. He knelt down, placing his hands on the symbols, just as Victor had done, but instead of trying to control the magic, Elwyn focused on stabilizing it. He chanted the words he had learned from the ancient texts, the ritual that would bind him to the castle, to the magic. He felt the power surging through him, overwhelming, terrifying. For a moment, he thought he would fail, that the magic would consume him as it had Victor. But then, slowly, the distortion began to fade. The room stabilized, the walls and ceiling returning to their proper places. The air grew still, the crackling energy dissipating. Elwyn felt his body merging with the castle, his mind expanding to encompass the entire structure. He could feel the magic, the power that had been sealed away for so long, now under his control. He was the guardian, the keeper of the relic. As the last of the distortions faded, Elwyn looked up to see Victor's form crumbling, disintegrating into dust. The castle was quiet once more, the magic contained, the war averted. He stood, his body no longer his own, his consciousness spread throughout the castle. He could feel the presence of the others as they made their way out, their relief palpable as they reached the entrance. Elwyn watched them go, guiding them through the castle's corridors, ensuring their safety. When they finally emerged into the daylight, he felt a sense of peace. They were safe, and the castle's secrets were secure. The entrance to the castle sealed itself, the stones shifting back into place, hiding the castle from the world once more. Elwyn felt himself fading, his consciousness merging fully with the castle, his thoughts becoming one with the ancient structure. He was the guardian now, bound to the relic for eternity. And as the castle settled into silence, he knew he would watch over it, keeping the magic contained, ensuring that the war would never be reignited. Years later, a lone figure would return to the site of the castle, drawn by stories of a lost expedition, of a castle that should not exist. They would find nothing but an overgrown clearing, the ruins of Eldoria hidden beneath layers of ivy and moss, its secrets buried forever. And as they stood there, feeling a faint, inexplicable presence watching over them, they would wonder if the legends were true, if the castle's magic still lingered, waiting for the day when it might be unleashed once more. But Elwyn, the guardian of the relic, would remain vigilant, forever bound to his duty, ensuring that the magic of Eldoria would never be unleashed again.